Okay, so I'll have to demonstrate to you how to do the student XML viewer, the viewer using Java program to have a user interface and read an XML file and display the contents of an XML file into the user interface. So for this, we are going to use an editor, of course, and I'll just use Sublime Edit. This one. I have a new file, and I need to import some files. Of course, import the AWT, and of course the swing, and we need to import also the JDOM org.jdom2, and first we need to import the document, and also org.jdom element. And since we are going to read a file, an XML data from a file, you also need to have the input and sax builder, as well as the um, java.io file. And start with the class, call this student XML viewer, which will extend a JFrame, and will implement action listener. Yes, so let me save this one as student XML viewer dot Java. I'm gonna save it in my documents inside Java programs and integration. I already have that one, so I'll just replace it. Okay, so I'll do the UI first. It's gonna have to be in a constructor, so public student XML viewer. Let's set the size to 400 pixels wide and maybe 500 pixels high. Set the title, of course. Um, Set default. Okay. Let's first have a panel for that will hold the labels. So we call this label panel. Let's go to the J panel. Of course, this label panel will have a layout of a grid layout. New grid layout with 5 rows in 1 column and 10 padding, and we'll populate it with the labels. So I'll have label panel dot add new, and the first label would be the ID number. Just copy this one and paste, and the next label is going to be the last name, then the first name, and then the course, and finally the year. Next, we'll have the panel for the fields. Call this fields panel. Also another J panel, of course. Fields panel will have the same layout as the fields panel, the label panel. So in this we need to have fields which are accessible by from anywhere within the class. So we need to declare them globally. So here we are going to have text. You have a JText field. Let's have the ID number field, and let's copy this. um, L name field, and this one is F name field, and course field, and finally year field. And that's what we are going to populate here in the fields panel, but we need to instantiate them all first. We have ID number field is equal to new J text field, and just copy and paste, and we'll have L name field, F name field, course field, and finally year field. Of course, we need to add that into the fields panel right after. So you have fields panel that add. We'll start with the ID number field first, then fields panel that add. Let's just copy this for the next. You have L name field, then paste. You have F name field, and then paste. You have course field, and then paste. You have year field. So we have now the labels panel and the fields panel. Of course, we are going to put them inside another panel, which will be placed on the north part of the frame. So we need to have another panel, which will be called the, say, center panel. Panel, of course, this is going to be another the center panel. We'll have the layout. Another layout would be, this would be a border layout. And in the center panel, we are going to put the label in the west and the fields panel in the center. So I have center panel that add label panel in the border layout the west, and center panel that add fields panel border layout that center. And of course, we need to have our two buttons, which is going to implement our action listener. So we need to declare here our J button, the prev, and the next button. So of course, we need to put inside a panel as well, and we'll have a panel, J panel btn panel equals to new J panel. Let's just divide the whole panel into two. So btn panel that's set layout is going to be a new grid layout with 1 row 2 columns. Let's have 5 pixels in between, and of course we need to instantiate our two buttons before adding it into the panel. So we have a prev btn is equal to new J button, and it's a previous sign, and next btn is equal to new J button, the next sign, and add them into the button panel. So within panel that add prev button first, and then copy this and paste to then have the next button. So we have added the buttons into the button panel. Of course, this button panel should only occupy half of the whole row, so we need to have another panel called bottom panel, because new J panel, which will also be having a layout of a grid layout, new grid layout, which will have 2 rows and 1 column. Okay, and so on that bottom panel we are going to add the button panel right there. So then we need to now add the center panel and the bottom panel right into the frame. So it's a add center panel into the center, and add the bottom panel into the south. Oops. Okay. So you might wanna try this first. Let's have a main class, main method. New. So let's save this one, and I'll open up a terminal. You have now an open terminal, and I'll go to the directory, documents, Java programs, integration, and I think I can find there student XML viewers. I'll have Java C. I don't know if I have Java C. Alright, Java C student XML viewer Java. Oh, we lack the S on the extends. And now that we are at it, we need to implement the methods for action listener in this case. So we need to add here public void action performed, which will require java.lbt.event dot action event ev. At that, okay. Let's go back here, and we have a bunch of error. Oh, org.jdom2 is lacking here, and the package jdom2 does not exist. That's because I have not copied the jdom2 library into the library, I think, of my computer. Okay. So as it turns out, my JDOM library is installed in my Java 8 directory, which is found in my case inside USR, local, and here's my JRE and live ext, and there's my JDOM. So I'm using the JDK 1.8 in this case, not the installed OpenJDK in your case. So that's why I'm going to try and compile using that path. So I'll have USR slash local and JDK bin Java C. So there you have stud XML viewer Java, and my public class is student XML viewer, and my Java file is stud.xml viewer. I need to rename that right here, so it's just only be stud. The same with my constructor. Okay, and let's see again. So I have 3 errors. Org does not have the JDOM2. This one, org.jdom2 that one. And now 2 errors. Student. Okay, the constructor, the instantiation should only be stud. And one more error, implements action list. What's wrong? Cannot find symbol action list. Okay, I have not included the import for the action listener, so you have to say java dot aawt.event.action listener, and there. So it's, instead of having the Java here, I'll just say Java, Java C. Instead of Java C, just the Java to run, and there's my, oh, the layout of my button is wrong. It's because of the layout maybe of the panels that's handling it. You have the bottom panel, it's a grid layout 2, it's 2 rows, it's supposedly 1 row and 2 columns. Okay, and let's do this again, compile and run, there. But I need to add a blank panel on the other, on the bottom panel right here. So yeah, bottom panel, that add new J panel, just a blank panel for that purpose. Okay, so there you have, um, maybe you just the size later, like that, the layout. Then the next thing you need to do now is the functionality, which at load time, just load the first student in the XML list, which by the way is, we need to know where that file is located. In my case, I just have it saved on my home folder, which is titled stud .xml. This is the one. If you view it on the browser, it's actually the same as the content that I gave you on the board last meeting. So we'll do that. Just add now the functionality for this. Okay, to start with the functionality, we need to have a way of loading the XML file into the memory from the but in this case, I'll be using just a file chooser to open up the uh, XML file. So in this case, up right here, just call init XML. And like create a private void init XML right here, from where we can have a J file chooser. JF is equal to new J. That and of course we need to have the file, XML file. To receive the J file chooser, get selected file, and then after getting the XML file, we need to load or create the XML file, or shall I say build the XML file. So I need to add another import here, org.jdom 2.sax builder. The sax builder is the class that allows us to build the XML from the file. So in this case, we already have a document declared. We don't have a document declared. We need to declare here a document doc. Let's while I'm here, let's just declare them all. So we'll have the root element. So we have element root, and of course a list. The list of the students taken from the root element, which this one will require another import from here, import java.util.list. Okay, so here let me annotate, this is to load the XML file into an XML document. You need to have a try catch for this case. So here I'm going to load the XML file using a sax builder. So let's create a sax builder first. Sax builder is equal to new sax builder. Then we'll have the document doc, which we have declared as a above, will be the recipient of the builder. So we have builder.build, and we're going to build out from the XML file. Okay, let me just try out if there's no error from that by compiling. As you see, we have an error. Oh, the JDOM is not actually not within the sax builder is not within the JDOM. It's actually within the input. We need to do that. So import org.jdom.input. Oh, I already have the sax builder actually. So it's there. Okay, let's do this again, just to make sure we don't have any error as we move along. And now that we have loaded it into the document, we'll just simply get the root from the document. So root is equal to doc.get root element. So now that we have the root, we can get the list of the you can get the list of all the children of the root, which will be elements also, which are student elements, because we know if you are going to look at our studs.xml again, so open it up. So the root element is students, and inside students are four or three elements, which are an elements of student. Okay, so if we're going to get the list from there, so say list is equal to root dot get children. So this root dot get children will returns a list of objects, in this case list of elements. Okay, so now that we have the objects, we are simply going to circle around the list to display the students one by one. And to do this, we need to get an index for which we are going to select the element from. In this case, we have 3 student children. This list will have a size of 3, and so the index we are going to use is 0, 1, and 2. And so we need to have that declared globally here as an index. Since we're going to start with the very first element on the list, we will initiate our index with the value 0. And so we'll now, from that, we are now simply going to load the information from the 0th element in the list and display it onto the screen, onto the UI, by creating another method. So just create another method, load student. From here, of course, we need to create that private void load student, and this load student is going to simply read the contents of the element in the list on the index. So we simply have an element student, which is actually just root dot get the index. And this will return an element. Of course, since not the root but the list that get index, this will actually return an object, and since we need it to be an element, we simply cast it into an element, because in the first place it was an element before it was inserted into the list. So now that we have that, we simply now call on change the values inside the UI by what the student have. So let's start with the ID number field that set text. And the value we are going to use is going to be student that get child text ID num. What we are doing here is On the remember that the index we initiated it with 0, meaning the first item in the list, which is an element. And going back here, this is the element that we're talking about, a student element. And in that student element, there are several tags, and there is a tag called idnum. And so this method get child text idnum simply gets the text of the idnum tag. And in this case, will give us 1 2 3 4 5, and that is what is going to be set into the set text. And we are going to do this with all the other fields. So simply copying and paste them all there. And this time we'll have the L name field, and of course L name here, then F name field and F name right here. Then we have the course field and course right here. Then finally you have the year field and the year right here. Okay, so that's what the load student does. Again, we loaded the XML file, which is done by opening a JDialog, and after opening that, we get a file, XML file, and using a Sax builder, we created an XML into memory using the builder and into the document. And from the document, we get the root element, and from the root element, we get the list of all the elements in the root element, which is simply three elements of student. And then we set the index to 0, and then call load student, which is simply read that student and display it into the screen. So let's try and compile and run this one, and run. So now it's trying we are now trying to open up the stud.xml, as this is the J file chooser. So let's just find where the stud.xml is, and once we open it, we now have our viewing the very first student. Right, going back here, our very first student is Avenido Froilan BS Cream 2, which is exactly what we have. Now the next step is giving this functionality the next and the previous functionality. So the next and the previous functionality is going to be simply changing the index, which in this case is 0, and after changing it, loading the student once again. Of course, we need to set the buttons action performed first. So we need to say here prev but maybe I should just put it in the right place where the buttons are declared, so somewhere here. Okay, let's just add here prev btn dot add action listener this, and also next btn add action listener this, which is going to simply use this. So if ev.get source is equal to prev btn, so if it's a previous button, what we are going to do is we need to decrement the index. So say index minus minus, but if the index is now lesser than 0, so from 0, if you minus minus, it becomes -1, which is not really part of the index of the list. We need to put it on the end, which is the end is simply the list size. So in this case, if index is less than 0, we simply say index is equal to list that get size, I think, -1. Or maybe I should say that size, not get size. List that size -1. And then after that, we simply call load student. And else if ev that get source is equal to next button, in this case we simply have to increase the index, and if index is equal to or no greater than list dot size, then index is equal to 0. So it if it goes farther to the end, you just go back to 0, and again once again just call, oh maybe just get this and call it outside right here. Okay, call load student. So let's see. Once again, let's compile, and before we run, let me just I'm getting annoyed by the size of this. So it's just, instead of having a 500 here, maybe it's just use 250 instead. And so let's compile it again and run this time. No, again we need to point to the stud.xml file, just that one. Click on open, and now we have the Avenido Froilan, and if you see next, Villarisa Anabel, and next Fernandez Earl Jan, and we have an error. Okay, the error is that we reached 3. Supposedly we should not reach 3. So it's going to be the problem within the next button, which is right here. If the index is greater than list, or should be equal. Okay, let's do this again. And so again, let's open up stud.xml and open. So there you have next, going back to Avenido, and from there we can previews, and so that's it. So let's review what we did. First, of course, we have the UI. Then after setting up the UI, we call an init XML, which will simply load the XML file by having a file chooser open up the file. After opening up the file, we used a Sax builder to build the XML file document into a variable called doc, and then we get the root element from the document using root, and then we get the list of all the elements in the root, so into a list. In this case, there are 3 elements, 3 students at that. Then we initiated index to 0 and called load student, which will simply read the element in that index and get the values and put it into the UI. And then the next is by simply changing the index and calling the load student again, we can move forward and backward by 3. If you are going to go back to our stud XML and edit this one, just add another student maybe. So just copy and paste, and maybe 1683, change this to Interia Benji BSCS 4, and file, save this. Let's see and try and run the program once again. And once again, open up look for the studs.xml, of course. And now if you click on previews, because this is the first one, we go to the last, there you see the added. So now there are 4, and that's it.